So I apologize to anyone who watched my previous video where I gave you totally wrong information about Poshmark taxes, but that's okay because today we are here to fix it. First off though, shout out to my man Jody Matoma, who is also a Poshmark reseller and YouTuber. He was the one that caught my mistake and explained to me what was wrong with what I was telling you, which is good because now I can explain to you the right thing. But this will now be Posh Talk, episode 2B, part 2 of Poshmark taxes made easy. Here we go. So let's explain this article. So one major thing that I missed, which apparently is very important, is that this is for sales tax and not income tax. So the reason they began the Posh Remit program is because legislation passed that online retailers who were selling in certain states had to collect that state's taxes and then give that money to the state's government. So, for example, if I'm an online retailer selling in Wisconsin, Wisconsin has a 5.5% sales tax, and that would require me to collect that from my buyer and then give it to the Wisconsin government. That's what the Posh Remit program is all about. They basically said Poshmark is now going to take that upon themselves so that the seller doesn't have to even worry about that, which is good because could you imagine trying to keep track of all your sales and having to match those to each state and coming up with the different tax rates because not all states' sales tax rate is the same, and having to turn that into each individual government? That would be crazy. That would be even more crazy than already what it is, just being a pretty involved Poshmark seller. So thank you, Poshmark, for that. But now that we realize that, let's talk about actually tracking, your income, your expenses, so that at the end of the year, when you have to file, which you will for your Poshmark business because you're using it as a form of profit, like as a form of income, let's prepare you for that. This video now, from here on out, will be showing you my best practices that I came up with after now understanding this article and realizing that I have to be very diligent about tracking my inventory and also tracking my expenses. So here we go. If you have any experience with any of the programs that I'll be talking about, or you yourself have some tips and tricks that you think I've missed, please let us know in the comment section below so we can all learn and grow from the knowledge that you have to give. But now, time for me to give some of my knowledge. Again, take this for what it is. Clearly I've been wrong before. I probably will be wrong again at some point. Hopefully not this point. We'll see. So first off, you have to actually be able to see how much money that you've made on Poshmark at the end of the year. So what you can do is you go into My Sales, you'll find yourself here, My Sales Report, and boom, we get back to the page that I was just on, where you can actually email yourself an Excel file which gives you all the data for your sales so you can see how much money you're making, so sales minus the Poshmark fee or anything else, and you can see what you've actually deposited into your bank account from Poshmark that year. So what you'd have to do is put it in, not 2018, nope, last full year. So like for taxes in 2020, I'd want the last full year. So January 1, 2019 to December 31st, 2019. And I'd email that report to myself and figure out how much I've actually made from Poshmark, which is good. So, since you are having to now track the income that you're making from Poshmark, it is very expensive, not very expensive, very important that you track your expenses as well, because these are what will serve as deductions for you and prevent you from having to pay as much in, because then they realize, oh, maybe they didn't make as much money as it actually turns out to be. Since you are not paying anything into the government with what you're doing now, you'll actually have to pay in at the end of the year for your activity and sales on Poshmark. So it's best to be prepared. The first thing that a lot of people track, and apparently I didn't realize you could do this for Poshmark, but you can, is the mileage. Yes, you driving to go picking or going to the thrift store or shipping a package all counts under mileage that can be expensed for Poshmark because it's business expense. So I recommend finding a tracker app of your choice. This is the top 5 article from the Penny Hoarder. I'll have that linked in the description. My personal use, though, is Mile IQ, and the only reason I really choose that is because I've used it before for work, so I'm, pretty familiar with the platform, and also because it's free for 40 drives per month, and since, it's for Poshmark stuff, I'm not really driving a lot for that, so this will do the trick for tracking my mileage. Once you track your mileage, the IRS actually has a number that they say is for gas, insurance, and maintenance on your car per mile. It's like, I think, around 40 cents. Don't quote me on that. But then that deducts from what you'd have to pay in, so it's good. In addition to tracking your mileage, it is probably more important and most important that you track how much you've spent on your inventory, because yes, we do spend money on our inventory. I don't know exactly how this works out with things like garage sales if you purchase from there, but really, since the items are so cheap, it's probably not that big of a deal. This would apply more for buying from places like Goodwill, or if you're selling like luxury items that cost a lot off the bat, because that would stink if they just looked at that as all profit, when in reality it probably wasn't. After doing some searching, I chose this application. I think it's Book EPI or Book IPI. Doesn't really matter. But the reason I chose this one is because you can divide the app up into different wallets and connect it to a card. So then once you make a purchase with your card, you can say, yes, that was a Poshmark expense, or no, that was a personal expense. And there's much more functionality besides just like tracking the expense. It actually allows you to take a picture of the receipt for that, so you now have that on file digitally in case something happens to the physical receipt, which you also should be saving. My personal recommendation for saving the physical receipts is making 12 envelopes for each month of the year and then placing the various receipts in the proper envelopes. But again, this is just the app I chose, and it's good to have that backup because receipts do fade. Your January receipts might not be readable at the end of the year. So, good thing you'll have them digitally on your receipt tracking app. For whatever reason you don't find this one to be a good choice for you, there is, the top whatever for managing receipts article here that I have, and I'll link in the description so you can look around for yourself too. The one that I chose isn't on this list, but I know it's a good start, and maybe you can see something that'll work better for you personally. Moving on from that, let's actually talk about the for-profit income expense, which is, I believe, where Poshmark would fall under. And that's a Schedule C income, but I could be totally wrong, so any tax experts out there, let me know. So at the end of the year, you'll file with your taxes, and then you'll put this basically under self-employment. You'll be charged a self-employment tax, which is pretty high rate from what I understand. I know when I had a 1099, which is self-employment, given to me for some work that I did, I had to pay out 30% tax on that at least. But the advantages here, since we're with Poshmark, is again the expenses, so that's why we want to take so much time to track those expenses. And I found, a very good article by Loophole Highway that goes through the process of, claiming a Schedule C income, so utilizing your receipts, returns and allowance, cost of goods sold, yada yada yada. If you want to look at this more, you can, but the whole point that I was trying to get across by showing you this is that you want to do a dang good job of tracking everything so you can give these things to a tax professional at the end of the year, which is what I'll be doing, because I don't want to have to deal with this. But as long as you have those good records that they can, build your tax return on, not tax return, your tax filings on, you'll be a-okay, and I will be too. So again, sorry about that whole mix-up with the tax remit program. We got it all figured out. I'll probably come out with a more detailed best practices video for tracking taxes in the future, but for now I figured I'd give you a quick overview. For me personally, I know that my income won't be insanely huge by the end of the year, and for tax purposes then it's not a big deal that I wasn't tracking everything. But for those of you who plan on making this a full-time career, I encourage you to do your own research, check it out, see what you need to track for expenses. If you paid for it for Poshmark, it's probably an expense, which is pretty cool. But again, the tax professional will be able to tell you what can be and what can't be deducted. That's it for today's video. I hope you have an awesome work week. We'll see you next time.